So just to let everyone know, this is the forgiveness series. I've sent a lot of communications out, so I hope everybody got them. Did everybody get their packets? Does everybody have their packet? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Okay, great, because we will be using them. So I'm glad you got them. So with that, in terms of our information, with the series that we're going to do, so today is session 1. So this is a 3-parter. So on session 1, today we're going to talk about the forgiveness circle. Has anybody had an opportunity to kind of flip through and read through any of the information yet?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you did? Look at Mr. Tom being all prompt.
That's how I roll. That's how I roll.
Me too over here.
Oh, you too, Miss Sharon.
Yes, it.
I'm not ready to her.
Let the hubby beat me.
So we'll talk about the forgiveness circle today. So really that's just analyzing all of the steps and stages within what it means to forgive. So we have to lay that foundation first. Then next Wednesday, we're going to talk about forgiveness in the workplace, which is a touchy subject. And then we're going to talk about forgiveness at home, which is an even touchier subject. But if we apply what we learned today in terms of those stages of forgiveness, we shall be able to navigate this a whole lot better than maybe we've done so in the past, right, in terms of what forgiveness is. So with that, we will jump right into it. So it tells you here, and it says it in the introduction of your book, which is on page 4, that forgiveness is a personal development opportunity.
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear us, Miss Bent?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
I was testing my microphone.
Oh, we can hear you, baby. So it is a personal development opportunity in that it calls upon us or calls into question our ability to accept, grow, and move beyond a tough situation or person who has caused us hurt or inflicted pain. That's kind of loaded, don't you think? When you think about what forgiveness is, it's asking me, not only I got to move beyond it, hopefully I'm learning a lesson in it from this situation or this person that has caused me pain. Has anybody ever been in a situation where they had to forgive?
Yes.
Good evening, Miss Nakia. Anybody ever been in a situation where you had to forgive?
Yes.
And somebody just totally transgressed you, right? I think all of us can say, yeah, I've been there, right? Where you wanted to throw nails, use everything but the gospel, right? When this happened. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we start to navigate these steps that are included in what we call forgiveness and then start to apply them in our day-to-day lives. So if we look at it in terms of forgiveness, the first thing we're going to look at is the forgiveness circle. And so in the forgiveness circle, there are 6 steps. And if you want to see the circle, I think it's on, I want to say in your pamphlet or in your book, trying to get there. I got a whole lot of pages in here.
Page 7.
Page 7. Yeah, page 7 is where the circle is. So in our forgiveness, and these are things that once you learn them, you'll be doing them, but you'll be doing them inherently. Like they'll come naturally to you, right? So right now they may not be, or it's something that I got to go to say, where am I at in terms of stages? Because everybody's heard about the grief process, right? The stages of grief. Well, you have stages of forgiveness as well. So the first thing you have to do is recall the incident. Some of us do that really, really well, wouldn't you think? I can recall the incident because especially if you're sitting in a circle of or a place of strong dislike, I won't say hate, but a place of strong dislike of someone, you are already recalling the incident. You are already pulling it up and thinking about it consistently. So here it is, we have to recall the incident, but name it. What is this incident? Secondly, we have to own it. Own what happened to us. It may not be that this is what we wanted to happen to us, but we have to own what did happen, right? Own what happened to us. Thirdly, we have to accept the incident. Accept what happened to us. Fourth, release it. That's where a lot of people have trouble. letting it go, right? Y'all know that song from Frozen, Let It Go?
Right.
And
right.
many people sing Frozen. If you got kids, you're gonna sing Frozen.
Oh yeah.
Okay, all right. So if you have that, there's a song where she let it go in a mighty way, but she let it go. And then the next one, it says heal from the incident. So once we go through all of these things and we hit that fifth step, and it's like, now that I've released it, I can heal from it. And then the last one says confront the transgressor. That's another difficult one, something that is hard to traverse depending on the severity of the transgression. So those are the steps that we're going to walk through this evening in regards to our forgiveness circle, and walking through those steps to make sure that we're navigating them safely for ourselves, but understanding the benefit of going through each one of those phases that we go through. Any questions before we jump into the phases? Everybody good to go?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Miss Kelly. How are you, dear?
Good to go.
I am good, thank you.
So nice to see you.
Yes, you as well.
And hello, Miss Perry. How are you this evening? I want to make sure I say hello to everyone. All right. So the first stage is to recall it. So if you are in your book, it's on page 8, and it says that in this stage, you are focusing on the incident, the person, or the situation that has caused you the pain, and you want to name it, claim it. So anybody who's ever went to church, they do that name it, claim it. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that before. Name it and claim it, right? So what you're going to do in this stage is you're going to remember everything that occurred to you on that day. What happened with the person who caused you to feel betrayed, who caused you to feel hurt, who caused you to feel abused, ignored, neglected, taken advantage of, and passed over. Now that's a lot to ask, right? Because when you talk about all of these things are not good feelings, right? None of those sit in a space where I feel warm and fuzzy about anything that has occurred there. But I have to sit in it, because what I have to do is seek the root of my emotions, right? Cause and effect. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? What about this situation? What about this person is causing me to feel this way, right? So I have to sit in it because I have to identify it, because you can't fix something if you don't know what it is, right? So now we have to figure out what is it, right? And so by recalling the incident, we also honor it, because everything that happens to us shapes us in some form or fashion. When you say good or bad, it shapes me. If I've been through a situation where I've been ignored or neglected, when I come out of that situation, do you think I'm the same person that I was before I entered this situation of neglect? No, right. I'm different, right? When I come out on the other side, either I'm stronger, more resilient. I can identify and notice things that I maybe was not able to identify and notice previously. So I'm changed, right? And hopefully for the good, based on how I process my forgiveness in this situation. So in recalling it, we honor it, but we also name it. And we want to make sure that we understand or recall it and figure out what is it about this person, this situation that has caused these feelings. Which one of these is my root issue with what has happened to me? Root issue that has happened to me. Then the next thing we have to do is we have to own it. So even in the book, I think it tells you that you want to name it. And from that previous page where it says you want to call it out to say when the person left or something of that nature, or the day he walked out, or whatever that looks like. So now you have to own it. So anybody ever taken a bath before? I'm not to say that you're not clean people, okay? I'm going somewhere with this. This is not to say that you're not clean people. But if you've ever taken a bath and you know how the water just feeling really good with you, and you just sit in the tub for what seems forever, and your fingers start to get all pruny, like when you get out of the tub, you're all wrinkly and stuff like that. So when we talk about owning it, that's what you're doing with it. You have immersed yourself in it. You are remembering everything about it. You're naming it, and you want to be so entrenched in it that you feel it viscerally, because now I'm owning what has happened to me. And I'm not saying that you're owning the or taking blame for what has happened to you. You are owning the situation that has happened to you. Because once you own it and recognize, okay, so here's what's happening. Here's what's happening to me, right? It could be a situation where you thought one thing was supposed to happen, and then the outcome of what that is was completely different. And as a result of that, it left you feeling away. Has that any, like, this was my intent when I did X, Y, and Z. But what I received from X, Y, and Z was not what I intended. And what I got in terms of my outcome didn't sit well with me. Has that ever happened for anyone? What your intent and what your outcome was two different things?
Yeah. Been there, done that.
Been there. Made you feel a kind of way, right? And so now it's like, how do I process this when these things start to happen to me? So in here, I'm owning it. And in the owning of it, if you look on page 9, it tells you that we sometimes, as a result of owning it, can alter our universe. Because if I don't own it, I explain it away. So has anybody ever been in a relationship where something happens, a red flag, if you will, with the person that you are involved with? And instead of confronting the red flag, you explain the red flag away.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anybody ever done that before? It's like, this is a red flag for me, but instead of confronting the red flag, I explain the red flag. Well, he didn't mean it, or she didn't mean it. They were having a bad day. But this red flag is a clear indication that there is something not aligned between you and the person that you're dealing with. And so what we do is we create what I call an alternate universe. I am living in my own mind because I'd rather deal with that than the reality of the situation that's before me. And a lot of times when we talk about forgiving people, especially when you've been cut or hurt deeply, rather than dealing with the pain, I alter my universe so I don't have to process it or deal with it as much. I alter my own universe. And so in that, I start to protect myself. It is a way to protect yourself. I don't deal with it in the way that I should. I explain it away. So it even says, as a result of the incident, you will sometimes create an altered reality. You provide positive spins to what the person was thinking or feeling at the time of the transgression. So what you've done is you have applied, well, they didn't really mean what they did. They are under distress themselves. The burden of what they were carrying was too heavy. And as a result of that, that's why this particular situation happened. So I give it an explanation rather than confronting it, right? And so now I'm living in this altered reality where I don't have to deal with it. So it tells you here that living in that type of world after the transgression is committed is often fueled by the trauma and the pain of the incident. And so rather than dealing with the pain and the trauma of the incident, I create an alternate reality for myself as a protection. So you become a second guesser and you question the motives of everybody around you, and you start to question your own motives for yourself. So now you've become a doubter. Because you didn't deal with the situation, you created this alternate universe, and somewhere in you, you know that what you've created isn't real. And so everything around it is now comes with doubt, doubtful intentions, doubtful words. And it's like, so can I even trust what I want to do for myself since I've created this alternate universe for myself? And so how do I put myself back into a place where I can own what I've done and face not what I've done, but what has happened to me? And face it front on rather than creating this alternate universe in an effort to protect myself. Because I'm really not doing myself a service if I do that. So in that, it says that you will have emotions that you will experience. And it says that you will experience confusion. Why did this happen to me? Anybody ever ask that? When something happened to you, like you just going along, drifting really, really well. And then something happens, you're like, okay, why did this happen to me? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Anybody ever been there?
Yes.
Right? And it's like, I didn't. Then we place blame. Has anybody ever been in a situation where somebody hurt you and you thought, well, what did I do? And you accept ownership or blame for the hurt that somebody put on you? somebody hurt you, but you accept the blame for being hurt.
Right.
Well, if I hadn't done, if I hadn't said, if I hadn't gone, then this person wouldn't have done what they did.
That sounds like gaslighting.
Right. But we take ownership of the pain. Somehow it's my fault I got treated this way. It's my fault that the situation went in this direction. It's my fault that I didn't get X, Y, and Z. It's my fault that, so we take ownership or blame for it. And that happens in this owning process that we kind of have to work through when we get to that place of confusion, because it's not going to go away. And then we get angry or anger. Because then now you want, has anybody ever, if somebody's hurt you, you've thought about ways that you could get them back?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
For
Yeah.
sure.
For sure, right? And so now you're like, just wait until I see so-and-so. If I catch you over here, this is what's gonna happen, right? So now I'm angry. I'm viscerally angry with you, and now I'm thinking of ways of how can I harm this person? And it's gonna happen. I'm telling you, don't act on it, but it is a part of the process. We get angry, we get upset, because now what I want is for you to be as hurt as much as you hurt me. Is that a fair statement? I want you to
Fair.
feel like I'm feeling. I want you to feel where I am right now. And I can't think of any other way to do it, but then maybe I need to cause a situation so you can fully understand where I am.
Maybe it's my bad because I want you to hurt a little more.
Right, right. Because I shouldn't have to sit in this place all by myself. And it's like, why are you over there keying? And I'm sitting over here about to be broken down. And then we have doubt. Some people think I'll never be the same after this situation. And you won't, but that's not necessarily a negative thing. There will be a change in you. Some people don't think they can move on from a particular situation, right? I can't move past what's occurred, what's happened. And we process this all in this whole situation when we talk about forgiveness, because the hurt can be just that painful. And it's just like, I don't know if I can do another day. I don't know if I can step out and do something else. This right here has me pigeonholed. And it can if we don't move through these steps within our forgiveness circle so we can heal from it and move on. Any questions about the owning part or anything anybody wants to share? Because y'all know, certainly I encourage people to talk to me.
Question in regards to this part here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it also too a possibility that the individual don't want to confront that particular person because they don't want to be involved in any type of conflict or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. So you'll see in the stages, confront the transgressor is the very last one. And what you will find is, and I think as we all know, forgiveness is not for the person who caused the hurt.
Right.
Forgiveness is for you. Totally for you. Because what we have to understand is, even if you want to confront the person that you're confronting may not be in the same place as you. Right? Because you've gone through these 5 stages, right? So you've experienced some growth and some healing as a result of the situation that you were put in or the hurt that they caused. That
Right.
individual may have never grown past the hurt they caused you.
But don't you think that I feel that I need to communicate to you if, something happens. I have to get that off my chest. I can't carry that.
And you certainly can. But what you have to recognize is in your sharing, recognize that the person that you're talking to may not be in the same place. So what you might be going into it seeking. Now, if you go into it, say, I want to confront somebody and I'm seeking restitution, I'm seeking your apology, I'm seeking your acknowledgement of the hurt you caused, you may be severely disappointed.
Right.
Because they may not be in a place where they even recognize that they hurt you.
Right.
And Nicole,
Yes, so go ahead.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good, baby. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that even with confronting, and sometimes, especially, as I believe Sylvia, is that her name? Sylvia?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly. Sylvia was saying is that, somebody might not want to confront it to avoid conflict, or sometimes, even a dangerous situation. But I think sometimes confronting it is, and like you said, getting it off your chest may mean sometimes writing it down, or just confronting yourself with exactly what happened. And I'm thinking that because it could be with somebody, there's a situation and you never get the opportunity to confront them because, they're not nowhere around you, and or what if they're deceased or something. But I think, there's other ways that I think you can confront what in situations where it can't, happen, that you can still confront it without having to confront it physically or directly to that person.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, writing it down. You can even write a letter. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just knowing that if you get to a place where you feel like I'm good and now I can confront you and share with you, don't expect that that person is going to be in the same place. And sometimes they may not even give you an audience to share what you got on your mind, because they was like, I could care less what you're going through, because again, they're not in the same place as you, and may not have even realized that they hurt you. Sharon, you got a question?
Or may not care.
I was just about to say exactly, let me put my camera on. I was just about to say the exact same thing you just said, is that they might not even know that you were hurt by something. A lot of times when you go back to confront someone or speak on something that may have bothered you, a lot of times you realize the person doesn't even know that that was something that may have bothered you. And that's kind of where, you have to kind of decide, okay, am I going to forgive this person, or forgive the situation? But I've noticed that myself. Sometimes a person just has a bad day and it's the way they said something to you, or whatever, or that person is having a bad week or whatever. But a lot of times people do not know that they have done something against you, which is, I think it's kind of crazy, but it happens.
Yeah. That's that whole thing where we kind of place ourselves on other people. So like when I meet people, I was like, there's certain things I know I will and will not do, certain things I will and will not say. When I meet people, my assumption is that you are like me. Because has anybody ever said, I would never do X, Y, and Z? Right, but the operative word in that statement is I. You are not I, because they are they and you are you. So what you would or would not do does not necessarily fall into the space or the realm of what somebody else will or will not do. Right. And we have this thing where we layer ourselves, we graft ourselves onto other people, thinking that I'm dealing with the same level of mentality, the same level of character, and the same level of trust. They're not you. And so you can't graft yourself onto somebody else and then expect the same outcome, because that person is not who you are.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. Forgiveness is a lot. It's a struggle. It is. It's a lot. And there's levels to it, because everything doesn't require this grandstand confrontation, right? Sometimes it's just a quick, hey, did you know I didn't appreciate that, right? Sometimes it's just as quick as that. But when we talk about those things that cut deeply, like when you pass me over, and no, you don't pass me over once, you pass me over 3 or 4 times, right? And we're having conversations about where I want to be and where I want to go. But every time that opportunity comes up, I'm still sitting where I'm sitting and other people are moving. That's a hurt that I can't even begin to tell you what that looks like, right? So that's a different level of pain, a different level of transgression that has happened, because you know what it is that I want, right? You know what I'm seeking, and we've had conversations about what I'm seeking. Yet when the opportunity arises, somehow I don't know nothing about it until somebody else has the position. That's one hurt. That's just one.
I was thinking the same thing. There are different levels of transgression. So I think in every transgression, you may not have to go through each phase of forgiveness, because some things you make an assessment, you qualify it as on your own personal scale. Is
Right.
this a big deal? And how much do I care about it? How much did it damage me?
Right.
Right.
Your own custom,
Yeah.
like the buffet of the forgiveness scale, right? Like I'm there's a little reflecting. I'm to them, oh, you don't hear me? Whatever, you know. And then there's stuff that does, as you said, Nicole, cut very deep.
Right.
And I think based off of the depth of the wound, as you start to get down to, you know, like I was really thinking about like this anger and this doubt section in particular, that's where it starts to get really hard. And Kelly made a good point because a lot of times in those situations, you may not have the opportunity to confront the person because they've already blown you off. Or you need them not only to feel what you feel, but at least just acknowledge or atone in some way. And that's the closure that you need. Let's say you get past the anger. You're ready to forgive and you're at that last stage and you're just like, I just want to tell you. And I did all this growth and I did this. And they look at you like you're stone crazy. And they're still gaslighting you like, you went through all that? Like, you really need some therapy or something because it wasn't that big of a deal to
It
me.
wasn't that big of a deal. Right.
But does it depend on the person? Does it depend on how close of the inner circle they are to you, how deep it cuts you? And I know, Miss Barbara talks about this all the time, Nicole, in reference to your circles, your circle of friends, your inner circle and stuff. So someone that's not close to me and they do something like that, yeah, I might be mad right then, but it's not going to cut me as deep as one of my close personal friends that I have spent many years with building a great relationship, and then something happens and bam, you looking like, oh my goodness, how do I confront this person? Let them know you have cut me to the core. How do I explain that? And that's why I said, so it's kind of like, you're right, the different levels of the transgressions make a difference, but that's how you can have some of it. You can say, okay, I'm gonna forget that, and then some you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to pray on this a little bit.
Right.
No, and you're right, because the closer the circle, and I see you, Nikki, I think you want something to say. The closer the person is, the deeper the cut.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Nick.
So I was having this conversation yesterday with my nephew, and he was saying that people who are closest to you will treat you worse than people who are not. And that's not necessarily the case. The thing, you care more because you expected more from those people who are closer to you.
Right.
And one of the things that we talked about a moment ago was just getting it out to that person. First, we said that some people may not know. And then in addition to that, you may voice your opinion and your feelings, and they may not give you an apology. But in some instances, those actions were even intentional. So how do you forgive when someone has intentionally slighted you? And then in addition to that, you don't get that response that you needed, and anything that you say to them not taken, but you still need to provide that forgiveness. And it's because, Nicole, like you said, the forgiveness isn't for that person, it's for yourself. Say you're in a position where it's not a family member, let's say it's work. And I know we'll get into those different scenarios as the series progresses. It may be a scenario where you just needed to see who that person was. So that's your step to move on. And that's the forgiveness piece, because sometimes it can cut very deeply. Let's say you're working through your career and someone has tarnished your name in the work environment. That's going to hurt because of the impact on your life. It doesn't matter who that person was and how close they were to you, but what you need to do to get past it. Because if you don't take that forgiveness step, every single time a similar scenario comes up, or you get in a situation where you have to trust or work with someone else, you may bring that situation back up to yourself. And it doesn't matter what that one individual who slighted you before is doing at the time, what they have done since you moved on. What's going to matter is what you do in that moment.
Right.
And why the forgiveness is for yourself, because it dictates your actions in the next scenario and the next scenario with the next individual and your next colleague or your next boss. So that's the critical component of it, not just forgiving, because it controls your reactions as well. And you don't, your reactions controlled by that one individual who's there with you for the rest of your life at that point, every time that scenario comes up.
Right.
Yep. Right. You don't want to give them that. You don't even want to give someone that type of power, like to
Right.
continue to affect you. And one of them, you know, like a main reason I said is like, I know a scenario for me is for somebody that was deceased. And I was just like, but you know, but God, you didn't allow for me to cuss them out. Like, but God, I needed to say this, but no. And, you know, you also, you know, have to trust that, you know, whatever they're doing or whatever they did, if they continue to do that, that's on them, you know, whether you want karma or, you know, whatever. But to Nikki's point, what are you going to do with that? And are you going to allow that to keep affecting you, you know, because basically it's giving them power. And it's almost like forgiving is taking your power back, you know?
It is. It absolutely is. Because they say to not forgive is like you taking poison waiting for somebody else to die.
Yes.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
One quick thing I did want to say, Nicole, and I think I was talking to this to a couple of people who are on here that I know personally, that I always, before I start looking at maybe, I'm sorry, I don't have my camera. Sorry. Before I start to think that someone has done me wrong, I look at myself first. And I think this is something that as I've gotten older, I think I've started to get a little bit more mature in reference to myself and to know myself better. So I always, first thing I say, okay, Sharon, are you having a bad day? Is something bothering you? Maybe if that person said it on a different day, maybe I would have took it differently. And then I evaluate myself first, because first and foremost, sometimes we just take things sideways because we're having a bad day or something's going on. And so that's the first thing I do. And then once I realize, okay, no, that's not it. Then that's when I go to the next check and say, okay, is this person had a bad day? Okay, check, they are. And or has this person done this to me more than one time? Then I know it's a pattern, it's a problem, and it's something that I need to address immediately. Because at some point, just like everybody's saying, is that you cannot continue to allow someone to treat you in a unfair manner, because that will not be the exception. It will be the rule on how they treat you.
Right. Absolutely. I know I check in with my mom and my sister. If I feel off kilter, and Nikki too, hey Nikki. So I have definitely, especially at work, if something set me adrift in the wrong direction, I would be like, do you have a minute? And I will call. I have called my mom. I was like, Mom, am I processing this right? Am I feeling some kind of way right? Before I just jump off and start, you know, holding somebody accountable for. I always do a check-in. I do a post-check. I think you have to, because like you said, Sharon, which is a very good point, I could be having a bad day. I could be sleepy. I could be irritated. I could be frustrated with a situation. So I have to be mindful that I'm not receiving it incorrectly because I'm in a different place. But we also, I think, know when somebody is being curt and when somebody is being disrespectful, right? And so it's also recognizing that too, that there's like that was laced with disrespectfulness in that statement. You weren't being short with me, you were disrespecting me, right? And so it's also recognizing what the differences are between those two. But Sharon, I think you bring up a good point. It's always good to do a self check-in, or even have somebody that you check in with to say, hey, here is what happened. Am I processing this right? Am I feeling some kind of way? Is that validated? Or am I looking at this incorrectly, right? Because having somebody else who wasn't even a part of the situation kind of have eyes on it, they can bring a different layer of clarity that you may not have because you're sitting dead in the middle of it.
They can be objective.
And bring you back down so you don't jump over the
I'm good for asking my sisters in a minute. Wait, listen, is it me? Just tell me if it's me. And that's why you need people, you know, in your circle, as we said, that are going to tell you the truth, not somebody that's just going to agree with you because, you know, they're your friend or whatever, but somebody that's going to basically check you and be like, so number one, yes, you was wrong, or you took it the wrong way, or you shouldn't have said. And I mean, so yeah, that's really me. Like, listen, I need for you to listen to the scenario and tell me if it's me. If it's me, then I will take you all day, but just listen to this. So
you have to check in. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next thing it says is that we have to accept it. We have to accept what happened to us. And that goes back to what Sharon just said. It's all about reclaiming your power and decreasing the power the incident has held over you and the pain controlling you. Because that's what happens when we have these deep cuts. So it says, do not get stuck and allow yourself to remain available to the pain this incident has caused. And so we can't remain available to it, because if I remain available to it, that means it can access me at any moment, any given time, and any day, which goes back to what Nikki just said, where it was like that one trigger because of this one incident, because I made myself available to it, will rise up anytime something even similar happens to what happened. It don't even have to be the same situation. It just reminds me of the situation, and I can react in a way that is less conducive to what I need in terms of how I move and progress forward. So we have to accept what happens to us and fully embrace the incident along with its lesson. Now, what do you think something could be teaching me if I've been transgressed by somebody else? When it says it means you fully embrace the incident along with its lesson. What do you think it means by that? Anybody got a thought?
Well, to me, it means that you were able to step back out of the situation and do some evaluation and say, well, you know, I can take this, or I can take these points from this situation to better me.
So you basically look at it now and say, okay, now I know what to look for in certain situations when I encounter people. Perhaps I won't be as trusting going forward. I will take time to get to know the person before I just go all in, right? So it's really an opportunity for us to self-evaluate, to say, how can I learn from what has happened? Not to say that I won't ever get hurt again, but I can't get hurt in this way again, because I've learned from what has happened for me here. So there's a lesson even in our pain. And it's sometimes it's sad that we have to go to it, but sometimes you learn more from your pain than you ever would from your joy.
Yeah,
Like
another thing I noticed too is that's good and on the accept part, because I actually experienced something like this recently, and I think for the accept part, when you talked about realizing, accepting what happened, I think also that it would help also to now you know who you're dealing with. Now you need to adjust how you handle that person, because that person may not necessarily be, might not be I think the young lady made a comment about somebody tarnishing your name. So that might be somebody that you know or don't know or just know vaguely, but maybe somebody that you know very well, somebody that knows a whole lot about you. It could be a friend, it could be a parent, it could be your best friend, it could be your husband or your wife. And that person has this inside track on your life, and you've dealt with that person over some period of time, and so they know all the buttons. So with that being said, by accepting the incident and realizing, okay, now let me take a step back and say, okay, well, this is what happened. This is probably why it happened. So maybe I need to adjust my relationship with this particular person.
When somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
That has come up several times in our conversations, because it's absolutely true. And so now I have to adjust how I deal with you. And then sometimes the adjustment is there is distance. I don't deal with you at all. Right? So if I see you, I'm cordial, but I don't have to be ooey gooey and say, hey, girl, I ain't seen you. No, I can throw up my hand and I can keep it moving. But it could be that what to deal with you is to not deal with you.
Yeah.
Keep them at arm's length.
Absolutely. Tamika, did you have something?
I had a spoon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you have something, Tamika, or is that what you wanted to say?
Really, it was really that is really, I think the lesson in it is next time you won't be as naive to a person a
Mhm.
lot of times, right? So but again, that is us projecting on them what we think they should be like.
Mhm.
And like we were talking about, they may not know that they hurt you, and sometimes it's intentional, right? And sometimes it is very intentional that they used you for that or whatever.
Mhm.
And not only do they know, they really don't care how bad it hurt you, right? So recognizing that in people, I think it allows you to not be so naive with other people,
Mhm.
right?
Right. We don't go in just full blown trusting. And it's not that I say I don't trust you, but I certainly now make sure I take my time before I just give you everything, access to everything, right? Now it's like you have access to this. And if I get to know you better, perhaps you can get access to this, right? You don't get access to everything up front. All right. So after we accept it, then we get to release it. In this stage, you are letting it go. That's the hard part. Letting it go for some people, right? And I know it has definitely been a hard part for me, and especially depending on how deep the transgression is. And what I realized, and kind of going back to that whole piece where you talk about if I don't let it go, it's like me taking the poison and waiting for somebody else to die. If I don't release it and I hold on to my anger, that means every day I make a conscious decision to be intentional in my recalling of the incident, because that's the only way I can hate you. So every time I get out of my bed, I make a conscious decision and choice to intentionally place myself in the situation just so I can continue to hate you.
See, that's
Before I do anything else with my day, that's what I do.
That's a lot of stress that you putting on yourself. You letting that you're letting that consume you.
Mm-hmm. But that's the only way I can continue to fuel my anger. That's the only way I can not let it go. I have to intentionally every day. And the reason why I know this is because I did it. Every day I would wake up and my first thought was what this person did to me before I did anything else.
That's not healthy either. That's not good.
Oh no, it's not. But I'm
personally,
I'm just letting you. But I'm
Right.
saying it because I've been there,
Right.
and
right.
because that person caused so much hurt to me, I wanted them to feel it 12 times over, if
And
not
they
more.
And
And
they
they
probably didn't.
And they did.
Right.
Was living their best life. I even confronted this person, not necessarily physically, but wrote them a letter.
Right.
And told them everything that they had done when I got to that point, right? This was not a letter that I wrote when I was in my anger stage, because it was a consistent, intentional thought every morning. But I even wrote them a letter. But by this time I was healed from it and I had let it go. Wrote them a letter, told them everything that they had done and how I felt. And they hit me with, okay. That's all I got. Now, if I wasn't healed from it, what do you think okay would have done to me?
You would have snapped.
Triggered. Started
I
all,
would have started all back over.
all back
Right,
over.
I would have started all the way back over, right?
Right.
All the way
right.
back over. But because
Right.
I was healed and I recognized that just because I was okay didn't mean they were okay. It didn't bother me when they said, okay.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I no longer needed you to be healed. I never needed you to begin with. I just wanted you to know what you had done. And sometimes it's like, I just wanted you to know. We don't need to do anything else. And now I don't have to deal with you.
Right.
Right. So it's that releasing, like you say, Sylvia, that I had to do, because otherwise I would have killed me.
Yep.
Because I was given a whole lot of power to that situation to have it be my first thought before I did anything else in my day.
Right. Right.
Anything else.
Yes.
That was the first thought that I had. But that's the only way I could fuel my hate. I had to keep being in that place all the time, which was what fed the hate or the anger that I had for the person.
Right. That's not a good place to be either.
Not at all. I was drinking poison wanting them to die. Not
Right.
gonna happen, right? Not gonna happen. So
Right.
releasing us allows us to breathe, right? And I think there's a thing in when you look at in the book when it says to release it on page 12, I talk about carrying a lot. You know, come home from the grocery store, say you got your laptop and your bag and everything, you coming in from the grocery store. And how many everybody, my mama calls it a lazy man's turn, where you try to carry everything into the house at once because you don't want to go back to the car. Anybody ever done that before?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
Right. And be struggling and heavy breathing all the way.
Yes.
Wait,
I know,
what
I
does
know somebody. Like that. I know
Only
somebody.
one step. Only
So
one
that's-
step.
what does your mom call it?
Oh, she calls it a lazy man's turn.
Wow.
Because you don't want to do it but once. And I'm a victim of it quite consistently. But when you do that, you see all of that you're carrying, how difficult it is to walk, how difficult it is to breathe, how difficult it is to open the door. Like just basic functions decrease significantly because you're trying to take everything with you at once. When if you just put something down, how much easier could you walk? How much better could you breathe? And how much easier it would be for you to open the door. That's what happens when you keep carrying the burden of not forgiving. That's what happens. So we are not going to do a lazy man's turn and we're going to release it. We're going to take 2 grocery bags and a purse and we're going to come back for the rest, okay? We're not going to take it all at once. We're not going to take it all at once.
I don't know about that.
Look here, Kelly.
let me confront that.
Yes, ma'am.
Acknowledge.
Do it at your own time. Everybody got to move at their own pace.
But I will, next time I do that, I want to be thinking about your mama, that's for sure.
She used to say that all the time, and every time I do it, that's what I think about when I think about my mom, lazy man turn. So the last thing, well, not the last thing, but the last thing that really requires for us to be healed from this is to heal from it. So in this stage, you are releasing the incident's trauma, hold, and you step out of the prison the incident placed you in. You are living authentically. So in here, you are healing and you have been healed. And you know, these are 2 powerful words. And of course, they don't necessarily happen this quickly. And going back to what Nakia said earlier, depending on the transgression, you may not need to go through all of these steps. But it's important for us to understand what all of these steps are, especially when we talk about navigating in our professional as well as our personal space. Because forgiveness lies wherever hurt can come from. And you can be hurt at work just as much as you can be hurt at home, just as much you can be hurt by your friends, right? All of those places, hurt can reside. And as a result of that, forgiveness should reside there as well. Or we don't overcome any. And so here we get healed from it. And so we use this experience now as a vehicle to get us to our next destination. And now we're wiser, right? Maybe like Tamika said, maybe not so naive. We evaluate people in a different way. We don't allow 100% access the first day I meet you. You get access as I trust you, right? And I also don't allow the situation of somebody else to trigger situations going forward, back to what Nikki said, right? Because now I can think about it objectively where it doesn't have a hold on me. You will know somebody hasn't forgiven someone if they talk about a situation and they become emotional. If they break down and still are crying, they haven't let it go. And I'm not saying you won't feel anything, but you should not have an emotional breakdown once you have been healed from the situation that you have forgiven. Now, what do you all think about forgiveness and forget? Did you just side out?
That's a hard one. That's hard.
I may forgive, but I don't forget.
Right. So that's the question. Should you forget if you forgive, or do you forgive and not forget?
You forgive and not forget.
Not forget.
The question
Right.
you ask, how do you learn lessons? Because you don't forget. You have to remember what put
Right.
you in situation
Yes.
so that you don't end up
History
in that
repeats
situation
itself
again.
if you don't learn from it.
Exactly.
Yep. Agree with all of that.
Yep. Kelly said agree with all of that.
All of
But no,
that.
you're right. You can't forget it because again, to your point, Nikki, if I forget it, then I don't remember how I got here in the first place or how this happened in the first place. And so I'm doomed to put myself in a situation that will cause that exact same hurt again. And now I have to traverse this whole circle again because I didn't learn and I forgot about what happened before. You don't forget.
No.
You don't forget. Because it is a learning curve. Because that's the lesson. Like you say, Nikki, it's the lesson. And if I forget it, then I don't have my lesson. And I don't do any better once I heal myself from this incident. I don't do any better.
But you know
If
what,
you're gonna
Nicole?
learn, you're gonna do it
Sharon.
again.
Well, I was going
Right.
to say, one
Uh-huh.
thing I think I've realized in life is that God is going to make you learn that lesson if you don't learn it. So sometimes we don't realize is that we go back and back over and over and over again until you finally realize what he's trying to teach you. And so that's why you like, oh goodness, I let that person do that to me again. Why did I do that? I'm sorry, I don't even have my camera on. Why did y'all let me do that again? And why did I do that? Because you're trying to learn a lesson and you haven't gathered it yet. And so what I realized is that, okay, I need to stop and think about what is the lesson that I should be learning from this. And then when I realized that, like I said, when you get over 40, you start seeing things a whole different way because you realize, okay, I'm not going to do that again. So let me stop and learn what the lesson is, because sometimes God's just trying to tell you something.
Yes. And not only that, though, I always say to Sharon's point about not learning the lesson, and like you said, when God is trying to show you something, is that I always say it's like being on a plane and you're in a holding pattern. You ain't gonna land. You're gonna keep being right up there circling. You know, the airport. You're never gonna land until you get what it is he's trying to get you to understand, to learn, or any of those things. So it's almost like you're in a holding pattern. If you not only get that lesson but apply it, because you can get a lesson and be like, oh, okay, I got that. But if you're not applying it, yeah, you'll be right back. It's like, you know, he has a plan, or just in general, you're destined to do something. But if you don't go about it the right way, you're going to start right back over until you get it. It's no jumping steps. You got to get that before you can get to the next level.
And
Kelly,
I think
there's a saying that set up. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Right.
You can't go at it the same way.
No, you can't. You really can't, because it's nothing that's going to come out of it that's going to be any benefit to you at all. You're right.
That's right.
And I think that's where the acceptance piece comes in, because when you accept, that's where my learning comes in, right? Because it says accept and you learn from the lesson learned. What is the lesson learned in my acceptance of this? So we also can't be too quick to move from one stage to the next. Now, there isn't a time limit on any of them. So you want to make sure that you fully vetted yourself in each one before you jump out of one prematurely into another, because then you really didn't fulfill all of the stages. And when you get to the end, you're still not healed. And now you got to start back over again. So the key is to make sure that before you move to your next stage, that you have fully accepted where you are in each stage of that circle. Don't just jump to the next one and say, okay, I named it. That might be your easiest one, but after that, it's like, okay, but now what happens? Now I have to immerse myself in it, and I have to really fixate myself to say, what is it about this situation and about this person that is causing me to feel this way? Now I got to isolate root cause. So we have to look at it just like you would a project almost, right? Because this is the project of healing, the project of forgiveness. And I got to isolate myself to say, what is the root cause? What is the diagnosis? What is the sickness? So then I can apply the therapy. Because if I don't know what the sickness is and I don't diagnose it correctly, when I try to apply the medicine, it's not going to work. So I have to make sure that whatever I diagnose is the real sickness, right? This is what's causing me to feel this way. And then when I can accept it and learn the lesson, now I'm applying the medicine. And when I apply the medicine, now I can heal. Everybody good with that? Y'all look real reflective. Everybody look real reflective.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen with some comments.
Okay.
So if we use the project, analogy, one, what happens if you realize your scope was not broad enough? Okay, so you go through this project and you think you have the objective and the scope, and you get to the implementation and you realize that's not what I was supposed to do. Or you misdiagnose and you think, I've done all these steps, I'm ready to sit down and tell you how I feel about what happened, and I'm going to forgive and release, and I learned the lesson. And in that dialogue, or that confrontation, something else blossoms up. I'm like, well, I didn't even know you felt like that. Now I got to start all over.
All over again.
I know that's why you did that. Like, now, wow, I got that problem too.
So that's when in the stage where you're owning it and you're identifying all of the concerns, that's when you have to write it all out. Even if it doesn't even seem of consequence at the time, you put it. If it pop in your head, you write it down. And then after you get it all down, you go back and look at it and say, okay, if somebody asked me on a scale from 1 to 10, which one of these I was feeling the most of, where am I going to put my 10? So you may have 5 or 6 that you put a 10 under, and then you may have 8 that you put a 6, and then it's trickle down until you get to a point where it's like, okay, now these are the 10s, these 5. Now I'm gonna take those 5 and look at them and say, okay, out of these 5, 10 out of 10, when I think about which one of these is my biggest trigger. And so we kind of have to isolate it that way. And then you also, in my writing to the person that I wrote to, stuff started to resurface, right? And I was like, oh, that's a trigger. And so sometimes you can also, in the writing, like before I even confront the person, I start to tell the person. And I just write. And whatever it is that I need to say starts to flow. And then you can look at that and say, okay, I have more than one issue with this person. I have this issue with this person, and I have this issue with this person, and I have this issue with this person, right? So now I know I got 3 things I need to work on. And it's not just this one word, it's these 4. So that's generally how I do it. But you still may have to go through that process again. It's not to say that it's a one and done when you talk about forgiveness. It can circle back through again, depending on what triggers us. And there's some things that you don't even realize is a trigger, right? Until something else happens. You're like, oh my God, that's a trigger for me, right? And so now I have to address you in that way. But that's how you would do it, like first time out the gate. I would just like whatever emotion that popped in my head, I would just write it down.
Just do it down.
So basically, and like she said, in project mode, using that Lean Six Sigma.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, you just have to, that's how you would do it.
Going through it,
prioritizing it.
Yeah, I said, look at her using it.
I mean, that's how you would have to do it.
But
isolate
it's true.
What it is.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then that way you know what medicine to apply. And then you also understand how to confront. Because even in the fact that we say we don't have to confront the person to be healed from the situation, you also know who it is that you are about to confront, right? Most of us understand the personality type of the person that we're about to talk to. So you already know the response before you initiate the request to do a confrontation, right? It's not that, because going back to what Sharon said, this is not somebody that I met yesterday on the street. This is somebody that I know. And so I may not know everything about you, but I know enough about you to know how you're going to respond because I've interacted with you before.
That's a good point.
Right? So I already know how this conversation is going to go, especially if you've shown me no signs that you've changed anything about who you are, especially if I'm dealing with you even at a distance. Because even in my healing, I don't have to deal with you every day.
Right.
When I'm going through my forgiveness stages, how you doing? Good night. That's all I got to give you. And if I don't see that you have changed how you maneuver in your day-to-day, I already know how this conversation is going to go. I know what you're going to say before you say it. And so now I can prepare myself, right? for whatever those responses might be, if you allow me the opportunity to share with you in that way, because they may not. And I have to be okay with that too, because remember, before I ever get here, I'm already healed. Right? I'm already healed before I hit 6. So I don't even need to confront you. It's not a requirement in order for me to be healed. It's just an additional bonus to say, hey, here's how what you did made me feel. Here's how what you said made me feel. Now, what they do with it, on you. And even if you want to get nasty, right, and turn it around on me, because they will often do that. Because I think if you look on page 14, it says the person or persons may not be in the same healing place as you. There's a possibility they will not apologize or acknowledge they hurt you. They could lay blame for the incident squarely on your shoulders. If you hadn't, then I wouldn't. Anybody ever heard that before? Well, if you hadn't done what you did, then I wouldn't have said what I said. Really?
Yeah.
We on the playground? Or they could decline your request to meet. So I have to be okay if any one of those things happen. Because I've already acknowledged that they could, and my healing doesn't stop or truncate or go away just because one of these things might happen. Now, I'm not going to say you won't feel disappointed. Anybody would, right? If somebody denies you the opportunity or switches the situation around it. But what it doesn't do is trigger me to respond to you in kind.
I would also say too is as long as you know that you should and you know, healing, forgiveness is, you know, out basically what I'm saying is that you shouldn't allow someone to dictate your time for forgiveness or, you know, to go through the process too. Is that as long as you know you need to go, you know, acknowledge your first steps or do what you need to do to get there. Like you said, whether it's writing it down or deciding when you're ready to convert that person, but know that you make sure that you go through the process the way you need to and not allow someone to dictate when you should or how you should, you know, that type of thing too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we are about to break out. We just talked about this. These poor babies, they don't want to talk to us. Let me go through this one because we just talked about that. All right. So we are going to break out into groups. And everybody should have their group assignments. I think it's already set up that if I hit breakout, y'all go. I don't know. We'll see. Technology, not my friend. I hope you enjoyed our first session on the forgiveness series and walking through the forgiveness circle. I just wanted to remind everyone that when forgiving, you don't have to go through the steps alone. Please do seek guidance and assistance where needed to ensure you are healthy and healed at the end of the process. I hope you have a good day, and we look forward to seeing you again.